podcast. That's amazing. Welcome to the Crazy Dre Podcast Show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's man, aka Crazy Crockett, aka Andre's Podcast, folks. Here I am, Thanksgiving Eve, or Thanksgiving Day for you guys and gals. Got some NFL games going on. Got a lot of things to talk about. So let's play it safe. Hopefully everyone gets home safe, especially all the 25-year-olds and 21-year-olds and between those ages, and anyone else that has that don't have family. Usually people with family don't go out drinking unless they're cousins or whatever, but they make it home. Hopefully you guys make it home safe. Those who don't have family, they usually go out with a couple of friends. A lot of the college kids do this. A lot of mid-20-year-olds do this. I know I did it in the past. But as you get older, things like that don't look so hot. So, play it safe. Let's not be dumb. As I turn off my phone's sound, we got some NFL stuff. Thanksgiving, Detroit Lions against Chicago Bears, Miami Dolphins, Green Bay Packers, and New York Giants, and the Dallas Cowboys. But before we go there, we got to talk about a couple new injuries that me and Griff talked about earlier in a previous podcast. J.K. Dobbins is hurt. He sprained his MCL or knee, however you want to put it. But this guy always gets hurt. He always finds a way to get hurt. You got to feel bad for him. Poor guy, right? Will the Chargers survive without him? I don't know. Will Jim Harbaugh figure it out? Yes, he will. He always does. He always will. So as long as you got Jim Harbaugh, you're pretty safe of figuring out how to move on to the next week, especially against the Atlanta Falcons. Minnesota Vikings kind of surprised me a little bit. Picked up Daniel Jones from waivers, maybe for a backup quarterback. I just don't know if I would pick him up so soon. And the reason why I say this is because he's been on a bad team. He has bad experience with media. New York, it's got bad feeds about if you're not doing so well in New York or Philly, you're going to get a lot of hate mail, a lot of people they don't like you. Everyone doesn't like you. Everyone blames you. But now that he's with the Minnesota Vikings, can he brush that off? Can he learn a new offense as quickly as the Vikings want him to? I don't know why you would pick him up. You already got Sam Darnold. Their backup quarterback probably is a better choice than Daniel Jones. Probably should have figured out who he is anyways, but I didn't look that up. Of course not. It just popped in my head. A lot of times when I say things, it pops in my head, I don't do my research about it. But here's another thing to talk about. I sometimes wonder that Washington Redskins game and the Dallas Cowboy game, I think it's such a flip side that the Washington Commanders, I call them Redskins, because they still should be the Redskins, the Commanders, I feel like they should have killed the snot out of the Cowboys. And I don't care what anybody says about me as a person about sports and ESPN, and I know all this social media and all these other apps out there say, oh, it's a great game, great comeback, what an amazing kickoff return, and all this stuff for Dallas, and how did the Washington Commanders come back? I tell you how they came back, because it just happened. They kind of let that happen. I mean, it's just mind-boggling that they have to have ratings on Thursday football, and they know that they have a really good game. America's best team, America's favorite team, the Detroit Lions, if they kill the Chicago Bears, and if Dallas Cowboys, who are in third place, whom will not make the playoffs, but if their record is 4-7 instead of 2-8, 3-8, then people are going to most likely watch that game. But in all honesty, a lot of Thursday Thanksgiving games are not so good. Detroit Lions have lost last 8 games in a row, I think. If I'm right, the last time we won was in 2014 or 16. I think it was in 2016 with Jim Cardwell still coaching Detroit and Matthew Stafford playing under snap against the Minnesota Vikings. But going back to this Dallas game, I think it's kind of crock. No one's going to watch it. The Giants are horrible. I'll go through these games one by one about fantasy sports. Fantasy. Well, not so much fantasy, but maybe more like parlays and gambling and all that, because I kind of struggle with the idea of these games being so serious. But let's go with Detroit, Chicago Bears. The Bears are 4-7. Detroit's 10-1, the best record they ever had. They've never been there, so this is unique. And Dan Campbell, this might be Dan Campbell's first Thursday Thanksgiving win. Looking upward, as you guys most know, that David Montgomery he came out of the game, did not play in the second half against the Colts. Now, I had a parlay with 4 players. I had Jamal Gibbs that scored a touchdown, Jamal Gibbs with 50 yards, St. Brown with 60 yards, and Montgomery with 40 yards, and Montgomery got 37, so I missed my parlay. What I would suggest people to do with this parlay, I would probably pick Detroit to win by 7.5 points. Now, it could be a slaughter, okay? So this could be a landslide. But because Detroit plays such a, every time Detroit plays on Thanksgiving, they don't show up or something happens and the game's a lot closer than it was or it should be. As you guys know, last year Detroit lost to Green Bay Packers 29-22. I was there. It was a great experience. Thank you, Todd, for allowing you to sell me your ticket. I went with Parlay Sean. We had a good time. But I would say the over-under would be 35 points. I think they will score 35 points. I think that I would stay away from Montgomery as any yards. Maybe Montgomery 25 yards. I feel that St. Brown will get 60-plus yards. I think that St. Brown will get a touchdown along with Gibbs will get a touchdown. And I would say that if you're betting on Montgomery to get a first half touchdown, I would put that parlay together with St. Brown with yardage and Jared Goff with at least 200 yards. I wouldn't go over 250, 270. I would go 200 yards. I know it's kind of a risk. A lot of people say that's BS. Why would you say risk? Because if Detroit gets ahead by 2 touchdowns, or I would say 3 touchdowns going to the fourth quarter, I could see Detroit sitting down Jared Goff easily. I could even see St. Brown being sent down. But I would make it realistically. I would go St. Brown 50 yards, Gibbs 50 yards, and a touchdown. And I would also put Jared Goff with a touchdown. So Gibbs will get a rushing touchdown or a passing touchdown. Jared Goff will get a touchdown. And you can also go with 2 touchdowns if you think Jared Goff will get 2 touchdowns in the air. I wouldn't put him in a rushing touchdown. I see maybe even Tim Patrick would get you yards, maybe like 40 yards. I know Detroit doesn't really have a lot of receivers out there. Raymond's out or hurt. Montgomery, well, even though he gets a lot of touches in the air, in the backfield, I feel like if Detroit's ahead by a lot of points, they may have Montgomery not even play at all in the second half again. But Caleb Williams, this will be his first Thanksgiving game. Detroit does, let me see my stats here. Let's see. Well, Detroit does give up a lot of yards in the air, I think. They give up 227 yards in the air, which is not really a lot compared to what it was years ago with Dan Marino, Joe Montana, John Elway. That era, those guys were throwing 300 yards. For 227, being the 23rd ranked team to allow yards in the air. Maybe DJ Moore catches 60 yards in this game. Maybe I would go 50 yards to play it safe, to go both parlays. But to put that in a parlay, I just wouldn't put Caleb Williams anywhere on this parlay. Williamson, if you feeling lucky, you're feeling that he's going to get a touchdown over St. Brown or a touchdown along with St. Brown, along with Gibbs rushing, you can put that together. That could work with you. Williamson is getting kind of hot. But Tim Patrick is becoming the go-to guy other than St. Brown, especially in tight situations. So double coverage will be on St. Brown. Single coverage will be on Williamson. I do think that Williamson, if he is granted the wish to run a 30-yard dash, Jared Goff throws it to him, I think that's a great way to get an easy 40 yards with Williamson, depending on how risky you want to feel, how comfortable you want to feel. And I know that I'm putting Detroit to win only by 7.5. But, I'm a Detroit guy. I'm not from Detroit. I am just a Detroit guy. I love the Red Wings. I love the Tigers. I love the Pistons. I love the Lions. And too many times you just see a game that Detroit should be killing somebody and they're not. But this is different. This is 10-1. This is a whole different era. This is a whole new frontier for Detroit to be basically the number 1 seed. I'm going to go to the Dallas game against the Giants. As everyone knows, Tommy DeVito is not going to be playing. He's got a sore forearm. He got hit pretty hard. You got 2-9 New York Giants, 4-7 Cowboys. I feel like they're going to want the Cowboys to win this game just to keep it relevant against the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. Maybe fluff up some feathers up there, make things kind of, more watchable. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm not a firm believer that all these games are played by the rules. I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't, especially any Thursday night football. I don't care if it's prime time. I don't care if it's prime video. I don't care if it was on ESPN years ago. I just feel like a game like the Giants, a game like Dallas, it's going to be an ugly matchup. I feel that I do feel that the Cowboys has more talent. They just do. They have CD Lamb. They've got uh, I mean, they got Rico Dowdy, which he should be able to touch the football a lot better and gain his yards. And I just feel the over under 38.5 ESPN, 37.5 for FanDuel and covers. I would say 24-7, 24-10. That's 34 points. I think that CD Lamb will get 50 yards for sure. I think Nables will get it. I don't know about Nate. I don't know anything about the Giants. I just think the Giants with DeVito out, another backup quarterback, it's going to be an ugly game. They say 3.5 points for Dallas Cowboys. I think that's safe to say 3.5 points. It'd be ludicrous to see Dallas lose to the Giants and have beaten the Commanders. I think it'd be ludicrous. It'd be hard for me. It'd be difficult for me to ever watch football. Well, that's not true because I'm a Detroit Lions fan. But if you're just a semi-fan base person who doesn't really watch sports a lot but watches premier matchups, and a team like Dallas who's a lot better on paper at this point than the Giants, if the Giants win, I don't know what I would do if I was a Dallas Cowboy fan, but I don't know. I just hate these type of games. Just don't like them. Going back to Detroit for a second, I will say that Sam Laporta, if you got him on your team, I would not start him. He might have a mediocre game. He could have a big game, but I don't feel that they're going to play him that well. I think he's got a knee injury that he never got over from last year. I think they're going to kind of protect him until the playoffs season starts. I think if I was Detroit with Sam Laporta, I might put him in there just to get his wheels kind of warmed up. But I don't know if I would keep him in there the whole game or even majority of the game, just because if I'm any part of Detroit Lions, I know something that the fan base doesn't know. And that's that injury that I'm talking about. I don't think there's reason to get him hurt again before the playoffs, because I think he'd be a great asset in the playoffs than now. We're 10-1 now. The Green Bay Packers need to keep winning the games. Any other team out there even Washington Commanders need to keep winning games, because that could be one of our playoff looks. Philadelphia might be that look in the long run, and we're going to need Sam Laporta in the long run, not in the short run, but in the long run. Going to the Miami Green Bay Packer game. This could be a really good game with Tua back. Tyreek Hill now has a quarterback that he can run his routes and miscalculate his routes. Even when Tua back there, they have a chemistry going. I think that they'll have something moving. Green Bay Packers, I think Josh Jacobs is coming up strong. I was looking at stats here, and I'm going to tell you the truth. Green Bay Packers impress me. They have the third best rushing offense with 151 yards. They have the 12th best. I'm sorry. They have the 151.6 best defense. So, excuse me. They have the third best rushing defense with 151.6. And then they have the 12th best offense with rushing with 112 yards. The passing is a bit curious. They have the 11th best passing defense with 230 yards, and then 11th best offense with passing of 206 yards. What this tells me, well, here, I want to say one thing first. Remember how 151 yards for a Russian defense used to be really, really bad? Because if your running back is gaining 100 yards or 120 back in the 90s, early 2000s, even in the 80s, that was phenomenal. You're kicking ass. And if the defense was giving up 151 yards on the ground, that was horrible. But now it's considered pretty good. But this could be Green Bay has to keep winning this game. They have to keep winning. Because if they don't keep winning, they're in a heap amount of trouble. Because Detroit keeps winning, Minnesota Vikings keep winning. I mean, that whole division, second and third, and playoff spot for Vikings and Green Bay Packers could go from 3 to 6 and back and forth, and it could be a very bad spot for either of those teams to be playing against the Eagles. I would say Texans, but Texans up are kind of going down a little hill. Well, that was a bad whistle. Well, folks, I also want to talk about, that was your fantasy football, that was your Thanksgiving thing. Kansas City Chiefs against the Friday game against the Oakland Raiders. I mean, again, the Kansas City game that they almost lost last week was I don't know. I'm feeling that sometimes I wish the NFL would just let the teams who are good win and let the teams who are bad lose and not waste people's times. And not just that, it just gives more a realistic aspect of what life is about. And it also can be played by the sporting environment, sporting space. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I feel when teams are being protected by the organization of the league, when teams are protected by the league, like teams like the Giants and like the Bears and other sporting teams out there, when they're protected, or I should say Dallas Cowboys too, when the league protects certain teams to not be that bad or to protect them to be good, Kansas City is a good example of that league where they protect them from being bad because they need high ratings, because without that AFC team, you can't trust Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills to get things done, so they protect Kansas City from losing. I think that's really bad for sports. That's really bad for anyone that's a fan of anything that has to do with competition, workforce. You have to earn your keep, and you have to keep it. And if you start losing it, it's part of life. You go downhill, and then you have to reorganize yourself. And that's why I sometimes think that the leagues need to just let teams be bad. They didn't stop Detroit from having it 0-16. They loved it. They just demolished us. Every team, I think it was in 2008, that era, and we just got killed. And it was funny that Dan Campbell is a lot like that coach in 2008, Ron. Forget his last name, but defense coordinator, tough aspect. And then you had Dan Campbell, who's also tough. But what Dan Campbell has is a GM, and when you don't have a GM, you're not going nowhere. You're just not. So I just rambled 4 minutes about completely nothing about what I should have not said is should have never said about what I think the leagues are trying to do. But I did. So remember, when you bet games or parlays or anything, keep it realistic. Understand the circumstances, understand the ratings, understand what the entertainment industry is trying to protect. This may not help me get viewerships on YouTube or on my podcast, but I'm being honest. I'm being very, very honest. And going from Detroit Pistons, from Detroit Lions, so we're going to go talk to Detroit. Hopefully, Cunningham comes back. Detroit had a hell of a game with Jaden Ivey hitting his last second shot. Looks like a little bit like Michael Jordan, a little bit. I think Jaden Ivey has potential. I think Jaden Ivey I think his shots are low. I think he's changing his shot a little bit. I think his release point is a little higher than what it used to be. So that's something that that I hope that it's happening. Malik Beasley is coming on off. He's starting. He's just playing real well. Sasser's playing off the bench real well. Tobias Hill. No, Tobias. Forget his last name. Tobias, power forward, small forward for Detroit. I like when he takes his mid shots a lot more. He had a lot of great three-point shots against, I believe it was Toronto Raptors. But there you go. Detroit will play. Detroit Pistons play tonight. Detroit Red Wings play tonight as well. I'm not really going to talk about those games because it will just not make a lot of sense to talk about a pregame and then air it the next day, and you already know what happened. So thank you for listening to the Crazy Dre podcast show. It was a little crazy, a little nuts. I told my audience I would have a Thursday episode about Detroit Lions Thursday Thanksgiving game. Happy Thanksgiving. And I hope everyone has a great time with their friends and family. If you don't have friends and family, just know that there are people like you who are also alone. Hopefully, you can get a group together like meetup.com. That's where I have met my social group with people within the downtown area where I live. And we have dinner and a couple of cocktails. It's nice to be around civilized people. That's the way I would like to put it. So peace, love, and I'm out of here.